Marcus Chun lay bleeding in the twisted wreckage of his observation post, watching alien soldiers march past his hiding spot. The Zephyrian Empire forces moved with the confidence of conquerors, their blue-scaled bodies gleaming under the twin suns of Kepler 442b. They had just finished bombing the human colony of New Eden into submission, and now they were conducting what they called cleanup operations. The plasma blast that had destroyed Marcus's sniper nest had also shattered his left leg and burned half his face. His military-grade combat suit's medical systems worked frantically to keep him alive, injecting pain suppressors and clotting agents directly into his bloodstream. But the aliens didn't know he was still alive. To them, he was just another piece of human debris scattered across the battlefield. Marcus had been part of the 7th Reconnaissance Battalion, one of Earth's most elite sniper units. When the Zephyrian Empire had declared war on humanity 6 months ago, claiming humans were a primitive species unfit for galactic society, Marcus and his unit had been among the first deployed to defend the outer colonies. The war had been brutal and one-sided. The Zephyrian Empire controlled over 300 star systems, with technology that made human weapons look like sticks and stones. Their ships could travel between stars in days rather than months. Their soldiers wore armor that could deflect most human projectiles. Their plasma weapons could melt through steel like butter. But the Zephyrians had made one crucial mistake. They underestimated human determination. As Marcus watched the alien patrol pass by, he noticed something interesting. The Zephyrian soldiers were tall and powerful, but they moved in predictable patterns. Their armor was advanced, but it had weak points at the joints. Most importantly, they were careless. After 6 months of easy victories, they had grown complacent. The lead Zephyrian, a commander judging by the golden markings on his armor, stopped near Marcus's hiding spot. He spoke into a communication device in his own language, his voice carrying the arrogant tone of someone who believed the war was already over. Marcus understood enough Zephyrian to catch the general meaning. The commander was reporting that the human resistance on Kepler 442b had been eliminated. All human military assets were destroyed. The planet was ready for colonization. But the commander was wrong. Marcus was very much alive, and he was far from defeated. Using his suit's remaining power, Marcus accessed his neural implant and began recording everything he saw. The alien patrol routes, their equipment, their numbers, their weaknesses. Information that could be invaluable to the human resistance. The Zephyrian Empire had spent centuries conquering other species. They followed the same pattern every time. Overwhelming force, quick victory, then occupation. It had worked on the peaceful Andromedan Confederacy. It had worked on the merchant fleets of the Rigel Trading Union. It had even worked on the warrior clans of Proxima Centauri. But humans were different. Humans had spent their entire history fighting. Fighting nature, fighting each other, fighting for survival against impossible odds. The concept of surrender was foreign to them. As night fell on Kepler 442b, Marcus began to move. His suit's exoskeleton compensated for his broken leg, allowing him to crawl through the rubble toward the alien supply depot he had spotted earlier. Every movement sent waves of agony through his body, but he had endured worse during his training on Earth's most hostile environments. The depot was lightly guarded. Why wouldn't it be? The Zephyrians believed all human threats had been eliminated. 2 guards stood at the entrance, their attention focused on their handheld entertainment devices rather than watching for enemies. Marcus had lost his primary sniper rifle in the bombing, but he still had his sidearm and his combat knife. More importantly, he had his training and his anger. The images of New Eden's civilian population being slaughtered by plasma fire burned in his memory. The first guard never saw Marcus coming. A single thrust of the combat knife between the armor plates at the neck, and the alien dropped silently to the ground. The second guard looked up just in time to see Marcus's pistol aimed at his head. "Surrender," Marcus whispered in broken Zephyrian. The guard's eyes went wide with shock. Humans weren't supposed to be alive. Humans weren't supposed to speak their language. Humans weren't supposed to be capable of infiltrating their positions. But instead of surrendering, the guard reached for his weapon. Marcus pulled the trigger, and the alien fell beside his companion. Inside the depot, Marcus found a treasure trove of information. Supply manifests, troop deployment schedules, communication codes, and, most importantly, detailed maps of Zephyrian positions across the planet. He downloaded everything to his neural implant, knowing that even if he died, this information could be transmitted to other human forces. But Marcus had no intention of dying. Not yet. He also found something else in the depot, Zephyrian medical supplies. Their technology was centuries ahead of human medicine, and their emergency healing devices worked on most carbon-based life forms. Marcus applied one of the alien medical patches to his injured leg and felt the bones beginning to knit back together. As dawn approached, Marcus made his way to the communications array at the center of the depot. If he could access it, he might be able to contact the human fleet that was supposedly retreating from the system. The communication system was protected by encryption, but Marcus had studied Zephyrian technology during his military intelligence training. It took him 3 hours, but he finally broke through their security protocols. What he found changed everything. The Zephyrian fleet wasn't as large as they claimed. Half of their ships were automated drones designed to intimidate enemies. Their ground forces were stretched thin across dozens of worlds. Most shocking of all, their commanders were growing increasingly concerned about human unpredictability. The Zephyrians had conquered many species, but they had never faced an enemy that refused to follow conventional military doctrine. Human tactics made no sense to them. Humans would sacrifice themselves to save civilians. They would continue fighting even when victory was impossible. They would use improvised weapons and guerrilla tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare. Marcus smiled grimly as he read the intercepted communications. The Zephyrians were learning that defeating humanity's military was only the beginning. Occupying human space was an entirely different challenge. He began transmitting the stolen intelligence to a hidden relay station that he knew was still operational in the asteroid belt. The message was simple. The enemy was not invincible. Their technology could be understood and countered, and the war was far from over. Then, Marcus heard the sound of approaching vehicles. A Zephyrian patrol had discovered the dead guards. He had minutes before they surrounded the depot. Instead of running, Marcus smiled. He had accomplished his primary mission. The intelligence was transmitted. Now he could focus on his secondary objective, making the aliens pay for underestimating humanity. Marcus began setting charges throughout the depot using Zephyrian explosives. If they wanted their supplies back, they would have to come and get them. And when they did, they would find out what happened when you ignored an injured human sniper. The patrol vehicles arrived just as Marcus finished his preparations. Through the depot's windows, he could see Zephyrian soldiers taking positions around the building. Their commander, the same one he had observed earlier, stepped forward with a loudspeaker. "Human," the commander called out in accented English. "We know you are inside. Surrender, and we will grant you a quick death. Resist, and we will make you suffer for the dishonor you have brought upon our fallen soldiers." Marcus keyed his own communicator to the same frequency. "Commander," he replied calmly, "let me explain something about humans. We don't surrender. We don't give up. And we definitely don't forgive aliens who murder our families." "You are one injured soldier against an entire army," the commander responded. "Your resistance is futile." "Maybe," Marcus said. "But here's the thing about being underestimated. It gives you advantages that overconfident enemies never see coming." Marcus triggered the first set of charges. The explosion tore through the depot's east wall, sending Zephyrian soldiers diving for cover. In the chaos that followed, Marcus slipped out through a hidden exit he had prepared. But he didn't run. Instead, he took position on a nearby hill with a Zephyrian sniper rifle he had acquired from the depot. The weapon was unfamiliar, but the principles were the same as any precision instrument. The aliens were shouting orders, trying to reorganize after the explosion. Their discipline was excellent, but their tactics were designed for fighting conventional enemies. They had never faced a sniper who understood their equipment better than they did. Marcus's first shot took down the commander. The plasma bolt punched through the alien's armor at the one vulnerable spot Marcus had identified during his earlier observation. The commander fell, and his troops immediately began looking for cover. But Marcus was already moving to his next position. He had studied the terrain during his approach and identified 17 different firing positions with multiple escape routes. The Zephyrians would have to divide their forces to cover them all. His second shot disabled their communications array. His third destroyed their medical station. His fourth and fifth shots took down 2 more officers who were trying to establish command and control. The Zephyrian troops were highly trained and well-equipped, but they had never faced an enemy who combined human unpredictability with alien technology. Marcus used their own weapons against them, exploited weaknesses in their tactics that they didn't even know existed, and demonstrated a level of adaptability that their rigid military doctrine couldn't counter. By midday, the entire Zephyrian company was in full retreat. They had started with over 100 soldiers and ended with less than 50. They had lost their commander, their equipment, and, most importantly, their confidence. As Marcus watched them flee, he received a message on his communicator. It was from Admiral Sarah Morrison, commander of the human fleet that was supposedly retreating from the system. "Marcus, this is Admiral Morrison. We received your intelligence package. Outstanding work, soldier." "Thank you, ma'am," Marcus replied. "But I'm not done yet." "What do you mean?" Marcus looked at the Zephyrian bodies scattered across the battlefield, then at the stolen alien equipment he had collected. He thought about the intelligence he had gathered and the weaknesses he had discovered in the enemy's supposedly invincible military machine. "Ma'am, the Zephyrians made a mistake when they left me alive. They're about to learn that ignoring an injured human sniper isn't just a tactical error. It's a strategic disaster." 3 weeks after the depot incident, Marcus Chun had become a ghost story among Zephyrian forces. They called him the Shadow that Bleeds, and veteran soldiers crossed themselves when his name was mentioned. What had started as one injured human's act of defiance had evolved into something the Zephyrian Empire had never encountered, a one-man war. Marcus had established his base of operations in the ruins of New Eden's industrial district. The bombing had left a maze of collapsed buildings and underground tunnels that provided perfect cover for guerrilla operations. Using salvaged Zephyrian technology, he had created a network of hidden caches, escape routes, and observation posts that allowed him to strike anywhere on the planet and vanish without a trace. The aliens had sent reinforcements. First a company, then a battalion, then an entire regiment. None of it mattered. Marcus knew their communication protocols, their tactical procedures, their equipment weaknesses. Every time they adapted to his methods, he evolved new ones. Every time they thought they had him cornered, he appeared somewhere else entirely. Commander Zexthal of the 43rd Imperial Legion stood in the ruins of what had once been a Zephyrian forward operating base. The human had destroyed it 3 days ago, killing 18 soldiers and stealing enough equipment to arm a small army. It was the 7th such attack in 2 weeks, and Zexthal was running out of explanations to give his superiors. "Report," Zexthal demanded as his intelligence officer approached. "Sir, our analysts have reviewed the attack patterns. The human appears to have detailed knowledge of our tactics and technology. His weapons proficiency with our equipment exceeds that of our own soldiers. Most disturbing, he seems to anticipate our movements with uncanny accuracy." Zexthal studied the tactical display showing Marcus's known positions. Red dots marked confirmed sightings, but they formed no pattern that made sense according to conventional military doctrine. The human struck supply convoys in the morning, attacked communication posts at noon, and sabotaged landing pads at night. He moved through their sensor networks like they didn't exist. "How is this possible?" Zexthal asked. "One primitive human against the might of the Zephyrian Empire? Sir, with respect, I don't believe we're dealing with a primitive human anymore." Zexthal turned sharply toward his officer. "Explain." "The human has been adapting our technology at an unprecedented rate. He's not just using our weapons, he's improving them. Our combat engineers found modifications to the equipment he abandoned at Site 7 that increased efficiency by 30%. Modifications that our own scientists didn't think were possible." This was troubling news. The Zephyrian Empire's technological superiority was the foundation of their galactic dominance. If humans could not only use their technology but improve upon it, the implications were staggering. Meanwhile, Marcus was planning his most ambitious operation yet. Hidden in an abandoned subway station, he studied holographic displays showing the Zephyrian Command Center in downtown New Eden. The facility was heavily fortified and guarded by the Empire's elite troops, but Marcus had identified a weakness. The Zephyrians relied heavily on their automated defense systems. They trusted their technology more than their soldiers, which made sense given their superior equipment. But Marcus had spent weeks studying their systems, and he had discovered something interesting. Their AI had a blind spot. The Zephyrian artificial intelligence was designed to identify and engage threats based on movement patterns, energy signatures, and tactical behavior. It was programmed with data from hundreds of conquered species, making it nearly impossible to fool. But it had one fatal flaw. It had never been programmed to recognize human ingenuity. Marcus had been experimenting with a technique he called technological mimicry. By wearing modified Zephyrian armor and broadcasting fake energy signatures, he could make their sensors believe he was one of their own soldiers. The AI would classify him as friendly and ignore his presence. But the technique required perfect timing and flawless execution. One mistake would trigger every alarm in the facility and bring down the full weight of the Imperial war machine. Marcus checked his equipment one final time. He wore a complete set of Zephyrian combat armor that he had painstakingly modified to fit his human physiology. The energy signature broadcaster was hidden in his chest plate, programmed with the identification codes of a high-ranking Zephyrian officer. His weapons were all alien technology, but modified with human innovations that made them more deadly than their original designers had intended. As night fell, Marcus made his move. He approached the command center through the city's storm drain system, emerging from a maintenance hatch directly below the facility's main sensor array. The AI scanned him automatically and identified him as Colonel Vex Dye of the 15th Intelligence Division. Marcus walked calmly through the facility's outer perimeter. Zephyrian guards nodded respectfully as he passed, never suspecting that the figure in their own armor was the human terrorist who had been terrorizing their forces for weeks. The command center was a marvel of Zephyrian engineering. Holographic displays showed the positions of every Imperial unit on the planet. Communication arrays provided real-time contact with the fleet in orbit. Most importantly, the central computer contained detailed information about Zephyrian operations throughout the sector. Marcus connected a data storage device to the main terminal and began downloading everything. Troop movements, supply schedules, fleet compositions, strategic plans, and, most valuable of all, the location of the Empire's main staging area for their next offensive against human space. But, as he worked, Marcus became aware of a presence behind him. He turned slowly to find a Zephyrian officer watching him with suspicious eyes. "Colonel Vex Dye," the officer said carefully. "I don't believe we've met. I am Major Kethvar, Night Shift Commander." Marcus nodded curtly, hoping to avoid conversation. But the Major continued studying him with growing suspicion. "Forgive me, Colonel, but your height seems unusual for our species. And your gait suggests recent injury." Marcus realized his deception was unraveling. The modified armor had fooled the sensors, but it couldn't hide his fundamental human physiology from close observation. "I was wounded in the recent terrorist attacks," Marcus replied in fluent Zephyrian. "The medical regeneration has not been complete." Major Kethvar moved closer, his hand drifting toward his weapon. "Remove your helmet, Colonel. I wish to verify your identity." Marcus knew his disguise would never survive close inspection. But he had what he came for. The data download was complete, and he had already transmitted the most critical information to the human resistance. "As you wish," Marcus said, reaching for his helmet controls. Instead, he activated the electromagnetic pulse device he had built into his chest plate. Every electronic system within 50 meters shut down instantly. Emergency lighting flickered on as backup power systems struggled to compensate for the massive system failure. In the chaos that followed, Marcus shed his disguise and revealed himself as what he truly was, a human soldier armed with technology his enemies never should have let him acquire. The first Zephyrian to recover from the shock of the EMP died, with Marcus's combat knife between his ribs. The second fell to a precisely aimed plasma bolt from Marcus's modified rifle. The third managed to sound an alarm before Marcus's second knife found his throat. But Marcus wasn't trying to fight his way out. He was buying time for something much more important. During his weeks of surveillance, Marcus had discovered that the command center's main computer was connected to every Zephyrian facility on the planet. If he could access the core programming, he could upload a virus that would cripple their entire operation. The virus was Marcus's own creation, based on human computer science, but designed to exploit weaknesses in Zephyrian systems. It would spread through their network, corrupting data, disrupting communications, and, most importantly, feeding false information to their tactical computers. As alarms blared and reinforcements rushed toward the command center, Marcus fought his way to the main server room. Zephyrian soldiers poured into the facility, but they were hampered by the darkness and system failures caused by his EMP attack. Marcus reached the server room just as the first wave of reinforcements arrived. He sealed the door behind him and began the virus upload while plasma bolts melted through the barrier. The upload would take 3 minutes. Marcus had perhaps 90 seconds before the Zephyrians broke through. He used that time to set charges throughout the server room. If he was going to be captured or killed, he would deny the enemy their most valuable asset, their information. The door finally gave way just as the virus upload completed. Zephyrian soldiers flooded into the room, weapons raised and ready to fire. "Surrender, human," shouted their commander. "You are outnumbered and surrounded." Marcus stood calmly among the humming servers, his hand resting on the detonator for his charges. "I have a better idea," he said with a cold smile. "You will not destroy this facility," the commander declared. "That would be suicide. Humans value their own lives too much for such sacrifice." Marcus laughed, a sound that chilled the alien soldiers to their bones. "Commander, that's your second mistake. The first was leaving me alive 3 weeks ago. The second is thinking you understand what humans are willing to sacrifice for victory." "What do you want?" the commander asked, suddenly uncertain. "Nothing from you," Marcus replied. "I already have what I came for. Your computer network is corrupted, your intelligence is compromised, and your tactical advantage is gone. But, more importantly, you've taught me something valuable about your species." "And what is that?" Marcus activated the detonator. As explosions began tearing through the facility, he shouted his final message over the chaos. "You taught me that the Zephyrian Empire can be beaten, and every human in the galaxy is about to learn exactly how to do it." The command center collapsed in a cascade of explosions and falling debris. The Zephyrian soldiers fled as their most important facility on Kepler 442b was reduced to burning rubble. But Marcus Chun was already gone, escaped through a tunnel he had prepared weeks earlier. In his wake, he left something far more dangerous than destroyed buildings or dead soldiers. He left behind proof that humanity's greatest weapon was not superior technology or overwhelming numbers. It was something the Zephyrian Empire had never learned to counter: the refusal to accept defeat, no matter the odds. Across the galaxy, human resistance cells received Marcus's intelligence package. They learned about Zephyrian weaknesses, tactical vulnerabilities, and, most importantly, they learned that their enemies were not invincible. The war was about to change, and it had all started with one injured human sniper whom the Galactic Empire had chosen to ignore. 6 months after the command center incident, the war had transformed into something the Zephyrian Empire had never experienced: a conflict they were losing. What had begun as a routine conquest of primitive humans had evolved into a galaxy-wide nightmare that threatened the very foundation of their civilization. Marcus Chin stood on the bridge of the human warship Defiance, watching through the view screen as Zephyrian fleet formations broke apart in confusion. The virus he had uploaded months ago had spread throughout their entire military network, corrupting tactical data and feeding false information to their commanders. Ships that should have been coordinating attacks were instead firing on each other, their computers convinced that Allied vessels were enemy targets. Status report: Admiral Sarah Morrison requested as she joined Marcus at the tactical display. "Their fleet is in complete disarray," Marcus replied, highlighting the chaos on the holographic battlefield. "The virus has convinced their tactical computers that half their own ships are human infiltrators. They're spending more time fighting each other than fighting us." Admiral Morrison smiled grimly. "And their ground forces? Even worse. Every piece of Zephyrian technology I've captured and modified has been reverse-engineered by our scientists. We're now producing weapons that are more advanced than theirs, using their own blueprints against them." It had been an incredible transformation. When the war began, human technology had been centuries behind Zephyrian standards. But humans had one advantage that the Empire's engineers had never encountered: adaptability. While Zephyrian technology advanced in carefully planned stages over decades, Human innovation exploded in chaotic bursts of creativity that solved problems in ways their enemies never anticipated. Marcus had become the symbol of that transformation. No longer just a sniper, he was now humanity's chief technological warfare specialist. His modifications to captured Zephyrian equipment had revolutionized human military capabilities. More importantly, his psychological warfare tactics had shattered the Empire's confidence in their own superiority. The bridge's communication officer called out, "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Zephyrian flagship. They're requesting a parley." "Put it through," Morrison ordered. The view screen shifted to show the bridge of the enemy vessel. Commander Zexthal, now promoted to Admiral after the disasters on Kepler 442b, stood rigidly at attention. His blue scales had lost their earlier luster, and his eyes showed the strain of months of impossible defeats. "Admiral Morrison," Zexthal began formally. "I am Admiral Zexthal of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet. I wish to discuss terms." "Terms?" Morrison replied coldly. "You declared war on humanity. You bombarded our colonies. You slaughtered our civilians. And now you want to discuss terms. The situation has evolved beyond our initial projections," Zexthal admitted with obvious difficulty. "We underestimated your species' capabilities." Marcus stepped forward, and Zexthal's expression immediately shifted to something approaching fear. The human who had single-handedly destroyed the Empire's confidence had become a legend among Zephyrian forces. Soldiers told stories of the ghost warrior who could appear anywhere, steal their most advanced technology, and turn it against them with improvements that their own engineers couldn't comprehend. "Admiral Zexthal," Marcus said calmly, "do you remember our first encounter? When you told me that resistance was futile?" Zexthal's jaw tightened. "I remember. You made a fundamental error in judgment that day. You assumed that because we were technologically inferior, we were inherently inferior. You forgot that intelligence, creativity, and determination can overcome any technological advantage. Your species is unpredictable," Zexthal conceded. "Our tactical models cannot account for your illogical behavior patterns." Marcus laughed, a sound that made several Zephyrian officers on the screen step backward. "Illogical? Admiral, everything we've done has been perfectly logical. We've simply been using logic that your species apparently can't comprehend." "Explain," Zexthal demanded. "Gladly," Marcus replied. "Your empire conquers through technological superiority and overwhelming force. You follow predictable patterns because they've worked for centuries. But you've never faced an enemy that learns faster than you do." Marcus activated a holographic display showing the progression of the war. "When you destroyed our colonies, you expected us to surrender. Instead, we studied your weapons and learned to build better ones. When you captured our ships, you expected us to retreat. Instead, we infiltrated your facilities and stole your designs. Every time you escalated, we adapted and escalated further. But your losses have been enormous," Zexthal protested. "How can you call this logical?" "Because we're not just fighting a war," Admiral Morrison interjected. "We're fighting for the right to exist as a free species. You gave us a choice between surrender and extinction. We chose a third option, evolution." Marcus nodded. "You see, Admiral, humans have a unique relationship with adversity. When you push us, we don't break. We become stronger. When you corner us, we don't surrender. We become more dangerous. When you underestimate us." Marcus smiled coldly. "We make you regret it." The truth was evident in the battlefield statistics. Human forces had grown from a handful of primitive warships to a technological juggernaut that matched the Empire's capabilities and exceeded them in innovation. What had once been humanity's weakness, their technological inferiority, had become their greatest strength as they absorbed and improved upon everything they captured. "What do you want?" Zexthal asked finally. "Complete withdrawal from human space," Morrison replied immediately. "Reparations for the colonies you destroyed. And a formal apology to the families of the civilians you murdered." "Impossible," Zexthal responded. "The Empire Council would never accept such terms." Marcus activated another display, this one showing Zephyrian fleet positions throughout the galaxy. Red indicators marked ships that had been compromised by the virus, while yellow indicators showed vessels that were operating with corrupted tactical data. "Admiral," Marcus said quietly, "look at your fleet's status. Really look at it. 60% of your ships are operating with compromised systems. 40% of your ground installations have been sabotaged by resistance cells using intelligence I provided. Your supply lines are in chaos because our modified weapons are destroying your cargo vessels faster than you can replace them. Zexthul studied the display, his expression growing increasingly grim as he realized the full extent of the damage. Furthermore, Marcus continued, every piece of technology you've deployed against us has been captured, analyzed, and improved upon. We're now producing weapons that use your own power sources, but with human innovations that make them more efficient than your original designs. In effect, Admiral, we've taken your technological advantage and made it our own. But the real problem, Admiral Morrison added, is that this is just the beginning. Every day, human scientists and engineers are developing new improvements to your technology. Every battle teaches us more about your capabilities and weaknesses. Every defeat you inflict on us makes us stronger and more determined. Marcus leaned forward, his eyes locked on Zexthul's. Tell me, Admiral, how do you defeat an enemy that becomes more powerful every time you fight them? How do you conquer a species that treats every setback as a learning opportunity? How do you intimidate people who view impossible odds as just another problem to solve? Zexthul was silent for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. What you're describing is not warfare. It's evolution under pressure. Exactly, Marcus replied. And that's why ignoring one injured human sniper was the worst mistake your empire ever made. Because that sniper didn't just survive. He learned. He adapted. He evolved. And he taught an entire species how to do the same thing. The communication ended abruptly as Zexthul cut the connection. But within hours, Marcus detected increased activity in the Zephyrian fleet. Ships were powering down their weapons systems and beginning to withdraw from human space. Admiral Morrison found Marcus in the ship's workshop, where he was examining a new piece of captured Zephyrian technology. The device appeared to be some kind of quantum computer far more advanced than anything humanity had previously encountered. It's over, isn't it? Morrison asked. Marcus looked up from his work. This phase of it, yes. They'll withdraw, lick their wounds, and probably spend the next few decades trying to figure out how we beat them. And will they figure it out? Marcus smiled and returned to his examination of the quantum computer. He was already identifying potential improvements to its design, ways to make it faster and more efficient using human engineering principles. Admiral, they're asking the wrong question. They want to know how we beat their technology. But technology was never the real issue. Then what was? Marcus activated the quantum computer and began running diagnostic programs that would reveal its operating principles. Within minutes, he had identified 3 major design flaws that could be corrected with simple modifications. The real issue is that they still don't understand what they're facing. They think this was a war between 2 different levels of technology. But it wasn't. It was a collision between 2 different philosophies of existence. Morrison waited for him to continue. The Zephyrian Empire believes in superiority through dominance. They conquer, they control, they impose their will through superior force. It's worked for them for centuries because they've never encountered an equal opponent. Marcus began modifying the quantum computer's programming, his fingers dancing across controls that had been designed for alien hands, but which he had learned to use with incredible proficiency. But humans don't believe in superiority through dominance. We believe in superiority through adaptation. When we encounter something bigger, stronger, or more advanced than us, we don't try to overpower it. We try to understand it, learn from it, and become better than it. And that's what you did to the Zephyrian Empire. That's what humanity did to the Zephyrian Empire, Marcus corrected. I was just the catalyst. One injured human sniper who refused to die when it was convenient for the enemy. One soldier who decided that being underestimated was an advantage rather than an insult. Marcus completed his modifications and activated the improved quantum computer. The device hummed to life with an efficiency rating 30% higher than its original specifications. In the hands of human engineers, Zephyrian technology had become something its creators never imagined possible. So what happens now? Morrison asked. Marcus stood and looked out through the workshop's viewport at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, the Zephyrian Empire was retreating, their confidence shattered, and their assumptions destroyed. But there were other empires, other threats, other challenges waiting for humanity as they expanded into the galaxy. Now we do what humans have always done, Marcus replied. We take what we've learned, we build something better, and we prepare for whatever comes next. Because the universe is vast and dangerous, and there are probably other species out there who think humanity can be easily conquered. Marcus picked up his modified sniper rifle, a weapon that combined the best of human and Zephyrian technology into something neither species could have created alone. And when they make that mistake, he said with quiet confidence, they'll learn the same lesson the Zephyrian Empire just learned. Never ignore an injured human sniper. Because we don't stay down. We get back up. And we come back stronger than before. The war was over, but humanity's journey into the galaxy was just beginning. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, other empires were about to discover what the Zephyrians had learned too late. That underestimating humanity was not just a tactical error. It was a fatal mistake.